Hello there guys, and welcome to a CrashbashProductions gameplay. And today I just wanted to say sorry that I've been gone for a month once again. I've tried, I failed, and that's pretty much the story of my life. Just kidding. Right, so now today we have a special video for you guys who may be in relationships, or girls, if you are watching videos like mine, although I don't see why, because come on, I suck. Anyway, not in the direct way. And so we're going to give you some relationship tips from my personal experiences, and they are going to be very heavily based on my personal experiences. If you find that I'm wrong, please tell me why in the comments or whatever. So yeah, cheers and thank you for listening. And so, tip number 1. Spend time together. Because spending time together is very crucial. You know, everyone needs to see each other, and everyone needs to, well, know what each other bloody looks like. And if you can spend some time together just by yourselves, so you can spend time together with friends and everything as well, but you do need some alone time. You guys do need to spend time with one another just by yourselves, because after all, that's what a relationship's about, is being with one another and everything else, you know. But then that also goes to say, don't spend all your time together. There is a limit, and you don't want to overextend that limit, because otherwise if you start to do that, then you won't get anything to talk to each other about. You'll lose anything, any kind of conversation, extraordinarily good things. Like, you will know exactly what the other person's done because you've been with them all that time, and it leaves conversations dull. And if you spend too much time together, eventually you take it for granted, and then you don't realise how much it actually means to be with that person. And you always need to be reminded of that sometimes. But that's why you also need to see each other, is to be reminded of how great it is when you're together. So that's tip number 1 for you guys. So, tip number 2 is be honest and trust one another. Now this is a big thing, because not many people are very honest and or even trust each other. That's kind of where like jealousy and people stalking on one another comes in, and that's not what you need. You need to really trust one another. Anyway, you need to be honest, because if you're honest about how you feel about the relationship and how that other person makes you feel, even if like they could be really pissing you off one day, and you need to be honest with them and say, you know, that really pissed me off, or that really got me down, or whatever it may be, because that way you can improve upon that. They can improve upon things, and if they're doing the same, then you can improve on your faults. And you need to do this. It's very crucial, because if you don't, it's essentially what will happen is it will keep going until one or the other person goes, that's it, I can't deal with it anymore, and you break up. And that is one of the main things that people break up over, is because they can't deal with the other person's faults, and yet they haven't told them what they are, so they don't know what's wrong or what's happened or anything like that. And then once they find out, they're annoyed that they weren't told, in a way, or at least sometimes that's the case, or whatever. But not everyone can help their faults. Some faults you cannot help, but then you've got to learn to live with them and love them for who they are, which we'll get into a little bit later. But anyway, you've got to be honest, and you've got to trust the other person that they love you and you alone. If they've given themselves all to you, then you really need to trust them. They're not going to run off with some other guy, and if they do, then you shouldn't be with them, because obviously they're not worth it, and they obviously don't love you as much as you may have loved them. So that's what you need to keep in mind. So if you trust someone, at least you know that, at least they know as well that you trust them, and it's a good feeling. Right, so tip number 3, you need to support one another. Now this is a big thing as well, because some people are like, oh, you know, she should never do that, or he should never do that, because it's a ridiculous dream, it's a ridiculous fantasy, you shouldn't be doing that, try and do something else that's more practical. Now I can see where they're coming from. However, you need to support them, and if it doesn't work, even though you may have had your suspicions that it may not work or whatever, you need to support them at all times, because it is very crucial that you support one another. Because if your own partner is saying that you shouldn't be doing that or you can't do that, then it really brings you down, and it's very crushing on people's self-esteem and hopes and all this and that. And you really don't realise the impact until you see it for yourself or experience it for yourself. So you definitely need to support one another, no matter what it is. Like, let's say they needed to go away for, I don't know, they needed to go away in general, and it's going to be quite a while that they're away. You need to support that if it's their dream to do what they're pursuing, and you need to, you need to say they need to do this, because if they don't, then they will blame you for them not being able to do that opportunity if you ever were to break up, and you don't want that. You want them to see you for a good thing, and that's the thing, you need that there for them. So that's tip number 3. So tip number 4 is familiarise yourself, I can't say it very well, with their interests so that you can have things to talk about. Now this is quite nice, because it means, going back to the first one, it means that you can talk about things that you're interested in, which then makes conversations a lot more lively and interesting. And that's what you need. You need to be able to talk to one another as comfortably as you can talk to anyone else. But that's where you also need to make sure that you don't spend too much time with each other, or otherwise you've got nothing to talk about. But if you make yourself familiar with their interests, let's say it's I don't know, for example, for me it would be gaming, like Halo. If my girlfriend, if I have one, was to familiarise themselves with Halo, it would give me a lot more to talk about, and it would be a lot more interesting, and then I would familiarise myself with their things because of the same reasons. It makes conversations a lot more interesting, and that's the best part about it. And that's why, even if you dislike it, you should give it a go. Just give it a try and see what it's like, and see how they feel in their world or whatever. So that is tip number 4. And tip number 5 is a pretty basic one, which is love each other for who you are. If they are who they are, you need to love them for who they are. It sounds ridiculous, but it is one of the most fundamental things. If you love them for what they do, like say they're very easy, then you shouldn't be in a relationship at all, because that's not what it's about. A relationship is about loving each other, wanting to be with each other because you love how one another are, not for what you do with one another, for what you are to one another. And that is what makes it a relationship that is so strong. So unless you've got that, it will probably break down eventually, because you're building your foundations on a load of sand essentially, and it's not what you need. You need something solid, something which you can go back to, and if you think about, you're like, oh, I love them for that, they are just brilliant and I love them. That's what you should be thinking about, and that is my number 5 tip. So that's 5 tips of relationships, how to keep them generally. And I think, if you've learned something from that, kudos. I'm glad that you've learned something, and you need to try it out for yourself. And if you haven't, or you've got some tips for me or whatever, definitely put them down in the comments. I am very much open to any kind of suggestions, criticism, or anything. Just pop them down in the comments and I'll have a good old cheeky read. But thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry it's been so long once again, and I hope you enjoyed this gameplay of whatever it is. I haven't done it yet, so yeah. And I'll see you all next time. Have fun, guys, and thank you for watching.
Revenge. One minute remaining. Seconds remaining. Ten seconds remaining.